I'm not trusting and I'm not delivering this message. We got something special coming for the community. The American Indigenous Street and Music Festival in Atlanta in ATL 2025, June 2025. Support this. We need the community. We need our people who acknowledge that they are the real American Indigenous people to support this community event, the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival 2025 in Atlanta, June 2025. Be there, be square. We'll always be square, stand on your square, but be there and show your support. Donate to the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival, June 2025 in Atlanta. This is for the community. This is for us. And I'm not trusting and I'm not delivering this message. I got one question and one question only. Why is it that so-called Black Americans, why is it that our culture dominates America, dominates American culture if we're not American? If we're African, why is it that our culture dominates America? Now, we've been taught that we were enslaved, held in bondage, and we're not allowed to spread our culture around, that we were held to plantations. Now, Native Americans, the so-called Native Americans, they claim that they were never enslaved. They claim they were free people. However, you know nothing about their culture. Zero to nothing about their culture. Nothing. How is it that their culture doesn't dominate anything? You haven't heard of these people. They can't say, oh, they was all wiped out, because, you know, your culture is still going to be here in some way, shape, or form. And you don't know anything about their culture. You know, how is it that we, who were a small percentage of the population and supposedly and the most segregated and the most pushed aside people, put down, put out of everybody's sight, we weren't able to use public bathrooms and things like that. We were so suppressed, yet our culture still dominates. Our music, blues, jazz, R&B, soul, all known as American music. Our music is known as American music. Our dances, such as the Charleston, which became the popular dance of the 1920s, which come from, they admitted, you know, from so-called Black Americans, and it became a craze. You had white people doing it, the way we style our hair in the waves and our shape-ups that Caucasians came over here copying, that we did first. Okay? All of that come from us. The foods, you see, fried chicken, things like that come from our people. All of that comes from us. The foods that people eat, the staple food, like even Kentucky Fried Chicken, which was stolen, the recipe for that was stolen from a bronze woman, so-called Black woman, and I think in Kentucky, because at that time they said white people didn't do their cooking. It was Black people doing their cooking for them. Even a lot of those segregated places where so-called Black Americans couldn't go in the South, you had Black people in the kitchen doing the cooking and feeding white people. So my question is, how is it that our music, our style, our dress, our way of speaking, you know, even to this day down to hip hop, why is it that everybody copies and listens to our music? Why is our culture so, vast here in the society? And you can't call it African culture, because you go to Africa, it's not the same. You don't just move from one place to another place and then next thing you know, you just start creating a whole nother culture elsewhere. People are going to take their culture with them. There's a reason why we don't have any African culture. Why our culture is American homegrown culture. And they tell this lie that it's because we were forced to forget our African culture. We were forced to adopt the slave master's culture. What culture was that? The only thing that Black people adopted was Christianity. That was it. They was forced to adopt Christianity on the plantations. Other than that, what culture? We was doing all the taking care of these people. What culture did they teach us? They didn't let us read anything. And like I said, other than listening to them brainwash us with brain stain us with white Jesus and white God, that's the only thing they pushed on our people, or they gave to our people, which we could have did without. You see, that's it. Nothing else. Everything they got from us is in reverse. They actually got their way of speaking and talking and acting and style from us. Because when they came over from Europe, they came over here all tatted and tore up, and they started, like anybody, people take on when foreigners come to a place, they take on the style and the speech and the patterns of the people who are indigenous to the land. The only way our culture, our heritage as so-called Black Americans, which is really American indigenous people, the only reason why our culture is so influential in the society, the only reason is because we are indigenous to the society. You can't have people whose culture is so popular, yet they're not indigenous. Because according to how we told the story, we came here last. Like the so-called Native Americans was here, the Mongoloids, which is a lie. Those people didn't start coming over here to the 1800s. But you go back further into the 1700s and 600s, you don't see them people. You can't trace Native American to American Indian. On paper, you can't. Because it's two totally different people. The American Indian or American indigenous people is the so-called Black Americans, black people. And then they brought in a flood of those Mongolian Asians through the Asian slave trade, which was conducted by the Spanish. And they started becoming like the natives. They changed over from Chinos and Asians, and they changed over to natives. They came under native. And that's when they started practicing our heritage and culture and, copying things. They saw from pretty much like, again, how you see Latinos and them people come from Puerto Rico and all those Latin countries. They come into living next door to us. Next thing you know, they acting like us. We're not acting like them. They acting like us. You don't see us listening to Spanish music and dressing like how they was dressing and playing Spanish music. No. They start trying to act like us. They start rapping like us, losing the N-word like us, and listening to soul music and things like that like us. They start acting like us. So what does that tell you? We influence everybody. We influence everybody because we are the American indigenous people. And speaking of that, let's not forget about, what we've been talking about. It's coming together. The American Indigenous Street and Music Festival is coming together. The American Indigenous Street and Music Festival. So please hit the link and support that, because we need to have this for us. See, we don't know who we are in this country because we're not going to be given the truth. We got to search out the truth. We have to open the floodgates for the truth once it comes out, once we search it out. So part of, this American Indigenous Street and Music Festival is not just us getting together and partying and having a good time, which we're going to do, but it's to educate our people, our children, especially. They need to see and hear themselves, and know that they are the people, they are the real Americans, not African Americans, not Black Americans, but just Americans or American indigenous people, the original people of this land, the first and only real people, Americans of nationality of this land. They need to know that. And that other people have come in and taken their place. But, it is what it is. So how you come back from that, you teach the truth. You hold things like this, like the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival, where we're not only just going to highlight our American Indian heritage, we're going to highlight our Mesoamerican heritage. It's about highlighting our Mesoamerican heritage, the Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, the Mayan, to where they came into the Americas, the Mayans and the Aztec, and they eventually divided into many indigenous tribes. And that's where all these American indigenous tribes came from in North America, from those big nations, the Mayan nation and the Aztecs. So they made their way over into North America and set up shop in the southern regions and things like that, and did what they did in the South. They grew food from like how they did in South America. They was growing food, hunting buffalo, fishing, things like that, breaking horses, catching horses, started riding horses, That's what our people did when they came, the first inhabitants into North America thousands of years ago. So much so that we started building villages. Right, this is before the Europeans got here. This is before the Mongolian natives got here. We was doing this already as the first indigenous people. Then these Mongolians come over and start adopting our culture, and with the help of U.S. Caucasian history, they start remixing the whole account of what really happened. They take us out of the space as American Indians or American indigenous people. They take us out and place them in our place, put them in our place, and the U.S. government only acknowledges 5 civilized tribes, which are all these Mongolians. They don't care about the hundreds of other indigenous tribes that were here in the America. They call them Negroes or black people today, or African Americans falsely. So this is why we have to have this American Indigenous Street Music Festival. This is an historical moment, a teachable moment for our children, and something where we can have a big family reunion, because we're not only going to talk about our American Indian heritage and culture. We're going to talk about our Mesoamerican heritage and culture. In the South and Central America, we're going to talk about our American cowboy culture. You see, these are all parts of who we are. The American Indians are the American cowboys. The Mesoamericans, we all the same. So we're celebrating that along with our music. We're going to be playing blues, jazz, hip hop, R&B. We're going to be playing things, selections from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's going to be a beautiful time. Plenty of American indigenous type food out there. Plenty of bison, buffalo, and burgers, and, a lot of stuff, chicken, and a little everything. It's going to be food, everything. We're going to have merchandise there. So this is basically an American indigenous celebration for the American indigenous people who are falsely being called African Americans and black. So we're going to be giving that history out there. So support that. Hit the link down below, the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival. Let's make this happen. Let's get to the reason as to why. Let's get to the reason as to why. We don't know that we American indigenous people. Let's get to that. Again, we celebrating all of our American indigenous culture and heritage. And this is why I named the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival, not American Indian, because our history, our culture is way more than just American indigenous culture, American Indian culture. We are indigenous to the land, and we produce many cultures within the land. So this is basically paying homage to all of them. We didn't want to exclude any. We didn't want to exclude our American cowboys, our brothers who are American cowboys. We wanted to bring them into this. We wanted to, bring in, talk about our Mesoamerican heritage and everything, our American Indian, everything, our music, everything, everything that was born and bred in America. Everything that was born and bred in America, even our origins in America, because we're going to stop this African stuff. Our origins in America and America only. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're really going to delve into it deeply, because I'm going to be speaking there at the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival. We need to have this so that we can become whole again as a people. You see, because we're not whole as a people. Again, we still sitting around here referring to ourselves as black people, African Americans, and we still listening to people who stuck in the past referring to us as black people and African Americans, when it is clear that our culture still dominates. Our culture still, rings bells amongst the people. Our culture still resonates with people. And this is a perfect time to do something like this, have a street music festival, have an event that showcases us and who we are. Finally, because like I said, I went to a lot of these, I used to go to this African street festival in New York, and it just felt, just the whole African thing and the street festival. And I'm looking at all of these bronze people, or these bronze copper colored people, these people looking like they indigenous Indians of the Americas, calling themselves African. And it really, it really kind of made my stomach turn, in that our people are just ignorant and don't know who they are. It was one tribal African guy at the African Street Festival. He was the only African there. One African guy. You already know how they look. It was this African guy that was there. He, you could tell he was African. And he had his little drums and stuff that he was overcharging for. And he was the only African there. He wasn't even talking to the so-called African Americans. He could tell he felt out of place. He felt out of place. You see, two totally different cultures. The place where they say we come from, you can't find the origin of any of that music and that culture in that place where they claim we come from. Why is that? Why can't you find our culture in Africa if we African? Again, people leaving, because for the longest time, people try to explain away why we have this culture, our music and everything else that's not African. People try to explain that away. They try to explain away why do these people have this kind of, hold on the land as far as music. Where did the jazz, R&B, soul, all our music come from? They try to attribute to other people and say that we were influenced by other people. And I'm like, what other people? What other people? And if they influenced our music, how come they don't have music to sound like our music? How come the Africans don't have music to sound like our music? And again, how come the Europeans don't have music that sound like our music? How come the so-called Native Americans don't have music that sound like our music? You see, how come our music sound different from everybody's music? That's what I want to know. I really like to know this. Why does our music sound different from everybody else's? Why does our music stand out from everybody else's? How is it that our music is the most popular music in the world and we have nobody to attribute to that? That's all our music. Everything from blues to ragtime to jazz to R&B to soul to country, everything from rock music, all that's on rock and roll, rap music, hip hop. All this comes from our people. You see, all of it. All of the musical influences in the Americas come from us. Even the so-called reggae music, is influenced by American indigenous music. You see, because a lot of the people over there in Jamaica, they were trying to sound like the American artists over here, the so-called black artists over here. So we actually influenced the Jamaicans, not the other way around. They didn't influence us. So all this is American indigenous music. Our music is American indigenous, not African. And like I said, you're going to have people that's going to keep trying to, point us to the Africans and whatnot. But when we got to be smart enough to say, you know what? No, that's not who we are. We got to be smart enough to say, this is who we are. We should never let people misrepresent us. It's definitely not people who don't look like us, because that's what's been happening. We've been letting other people sit up here and write curriculums for us and give these people this poison to teach our people that we come from Africa and that we're not really American and all this other nonsense. And this is people who are European telling us that we're not really American. These are people who are European and Asian who came after us telling us that we're not really American. You see, yet they can't explain why our influence is strong in the Americas. They can't explain why. When they try to establish their little cultures here, and don't nobody care about their shit. Nobody cares about their culture. Nobody cares about their little festivals and other than them. But see, when we do something, everybody comes out. When we celebrate something, everybody wants to know what we celebrating. And so this is why we need our American Indigenous Street Music Festival, which will be taking place in Atlanta. We need your support. We need your support. Hit the link down below. Give what you can, all you can stand. We're trying to raise 15,000. We got our first 1,000. So we got 4 months to go. So let's make this happen. Let's get this money in. And like I said, the people who've given, we're going to send out shirts to you, the Olmec shirts from my company, ROA Apparel, the notorious Olmec shirt, all that stuff for those people who donate 50 and over, 60 and over. Let's make this happen because we've never had nothing like this before. We never had our own American Indigenous Street Music Festival. Everything we did had to be attached to Africans or so-called quote-unquote black people, whoever the hell that is. Because, again, black is just I told y'all, black is just some stereotypical people that was made up by Caucasians. Black people are stereotypical people or stereotypical characters that were made up by Caucasians and attached to us who are the American Indigenous people. Okay? That whole black thing, we got to learn to let go because too many of our people have accepted black and blackness and so-called African Americanism or whatever the hell they call themselves. So many of our people have accepted this foolishness, this lies, this stupidity. Stupidity at its finest. Because for our people to sit here and call themselves black people and continue to call themselves black people, it speaks to their level of intelligence, that they're not even questioning this. So here's to breaking the circle. Here's to a next chapter where we, the intelligent ones of our people, who know that we are indigenous solely to America, we can come out and celebrate that. So come out, celebrate that. We're going to be playing old school jams and new school good stuff in the A. We're going to be celebrating our Indian culture, our cowboy culture, our Mesoamerican culture, all of our music culture, everything. We're going to have spoken word there. We're going to have music being played that we're going to have open for entertainers who want to perform. We're going to do it all for the American Indigenous community, or the American community as I refer to it. It's about that time. It's about that time that we come out the bag and show up and show out and come outside, as y'all say, and show people who we really are. Because our influence is strong here in America, and we walking around here with our heads down and, allowing people to degrade us and disrespect us, and even us disrespecting ourselves, because our people don't know who they are. And even though the process is slow in them finding out who they are, it's a good thing because, like I said, it gives us a way to push out all of these falsehoods in the narrative of us. Even I learned things about that, about who we are more and more. I learned, I was always in reception of Mentellect, but this is all part of Mentellect too, because this is who we are going forward in the third dimension. This is who we are going forward as a continuous and collective people. This is who we are in real time. And why this has to happen in real time, why we have to show ourselves in real time, show the world who we are in real time, it's important because, like I said, you can't have that saying goes is really true. You can't really know where you're going until you know where you came from. And we come from here. We've always been here. Our culture was bred here. And no one took us from any place by no slave ships or nothing. That's a lie. We were already here in the Americas. But, you got people that want to accept lies because it's easy to believe a lie rather than to think about what the truth is. Think about which sounds right, because a lot of people, if you leave it up to them to think logically on what happened to us here in the Americas, they don't, a lot of people are just slow. They need people to tell them what things is, promote a belief in them, so they could, basically live their life and, not have to really think, not have to have the luxury, to not have the luxury of thinking, because they see their inability to think and having the luxury of having other people do their thinking for them. Tell them they're African, tell them they're black, tell them they're not indigenous, whatever. They'll accept that as long as they don't have to really put any stock into it or really think about it. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So support the American Indigenous Street and Music Festival. Come out, be there, be square. We out in the name of Amen by the power of Amen.